I wanted to start off by asking you what you're thinking about these days, because I know uh, I know what you've already done, some of it, and so I was wondering, what you're thinking about, what you're cooking up, what you're chewing on these days. Like, what's the new seeds? What are the new seeds?
You want me to start now, or
Yeah.
are you still giving me an overview?
I'm finished.
Oh, I suppose I'm at the point where I feel like it's been demonstrated that the theory works very well. It's worked in in an urban area, poor, low income. It's worked in a rural area. It's worked with kids. It's worked with adults. It's worked with people from different economic classes, all of them together in a very limited way. So now, what's the next step? And just at this point, well, the next step was to do 2 seed groups and see if they worked. And with women who were struck by the idea and wanted to do something in their communities about their people and their histories. And that seems to work. They fit right in. One of them did a brilliant scene. I wish I could claim it myself, about a retired school teacher. She's a teacher. About one of these terrible teachers. After 47 years, she's retired, and now she tells about it. It was tragic and funny. It was a marvelous scene.
Is this a West Virginia town around here?
Yeah, it's in Welch, near Welch. No, near Mullins.
Are these only women who are picking this up and taking it elsewhere?
The ones who are the seed people, yeah.
Huh.
So they're not starting in a way as simply as we did. In a sense, they're seeing what we're doing and then, going on from there in a way. So it was quite a sophisticated scene. So now the next step is turned into the next stage, which is the title of a proposal I just worked on last week.
For a grant?
Yeah. And this will be more of an acid test, because at least I'm still 1-to-1 with those 2 or 3 women who are doing the seed groups. I'm not there all the time, but I come maybe twice a year.
And do they send you
here?
Do they send you their materials?
Sometimes, yeah. We talk on the phone and all that. This next step will be a test of whether the idea works in without the person involved so much, to some extent. And that will be that we're collecting right now playwright directors. Of course, there are no such things. Nobody teaches playwright directing because they want to keep the playwright out of it. In the commercial theater, the playwright can only write plays, and they can't do that very well without the help of the director, the actors, the stage manager, and sometimes the stage hands and the hat check girl. It's a very demeaning thing to be a playwright in the theater. The authority has been taken away from the author and is posited in the director, who also takes away a certain authority from the actors. And on that, the director builds a sort of power platform which can make or break people, playwrights or actors.
So it's a hierarchy with the director at the top?
Yeah. And lip service to the playwright. But if you actually go along with the playwright to rehearsals and the whole process, which I did once, and this may not be true all the way through, it's you see the playwright slowly collapse.
Wow. You mean as they put the thing on the stage?
Yeah. So I was constantly at the Astor Bar with this playwright as he moaned and groaned and agonized, And it was taboo for him to speak to the actors.
Mm-hmm.
This is not always so, but quite often it is.
All he was to do was provide the basic script.
Yeah, and they sort of stroke them the first couple of days, and you give them all the flattery, and then put them aside. And I thought I could never, survive that.
Huh.
So
you're aiming to put them together, the playwright and the director.
yeah, but I also want to say there are certain directors that don't take away the authority from either one. But they're precious and they're rare, I think.
Uh-huh.
So yes, I want to restore authority to the author. So we'll be talking and thinking of writers, especially people who have a appreciation for the language here and the stories and see the beauty of it.
So you said you're collecting playwright directors. How are you doing that?
Well, for example, Public Radio Western Colorado sent somebody to interview me for a half-hour documentary, and she came and talked here, and then she came twice to the amphitheater, and she came back here, and she came again, and by this time she had lost her detachment.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out that she had been to the American Academy of Dramatic Art in New York, where all the, Robert Redford and all the biggies trained, a lot of them, and had quit it. And that's also a fertile place. People who can't stand anymore. After all, that describes me. I'm not totally in the raw. Although in writing I am, in a way.
Mm.
This is part of the background which might interest you. So I'm on a detour.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I went to prep schools, and I was always put in the non-college English section because they didn't think I'd make it. So they concentrated on the bright kids. And
was it because you were quiet?
oh no, I don't know why it was exactly. I think I was pretty obscure in whenever I wrote, and also I couldn't spell and things like that. And then both of them did this, and then I went to a university theater school and couldn't stand it, and entered in myself, worked real hard and got some good grades and entered myself at Wellesley, which I couldn't have entered as a freshman. On the basis of the fact that they had thrown out so many freshmen, and they had a few places open for transfer students. And at Wellesley, I took no English classes. I missed the one that you have to take as a freshman. So I never had Shakespeare, and I never had English lit or American lit. And I just sort of read on the side for those.
But were you interested in plays and theater at that time?
Yeah, I was.
How did that come about? To detour another one.
Okay, this is another detour. Detour 1A.
Right. Making an outline here.
I grew up in a Southern family, and for some reason I had an obsession about the way people really are and about the truth and all. There were a lot of reasons for that, and the insincerity of my surroundings was always bothering me a lot, because we were also told to tell the truth, and when I did,
That sounds like, what's that writer who wrote about the South?
Sounds like all of them.
She was a camp director.
Lynn Smith.
Yeah. What's the name of that book? Anyway,
Killers of the Dream.
Yeah, sounds like the theme of that book. about the truth and the obsession with the truth and
Right. I really identified with that. So, and for the same reason, I thought she put it very well. Relationship. I mean, I really had one of my two primary love relationships with a black woman instead of my mother. The other was with my brother, and so we are taught to despise that, and you also despise the feeling that goes along with it. So you have to work all that out later. Anyway. So I thought, well, maybe the theater is the place. I knew the church wasn't because I was experienced in that.
Did you go to a church that had any theatrical elements?
No, Presbyterian.
Pretty staid, huh?
Yeah. But I didn't know the theater much. And I thought, well, maybe that's a place where people can say what they really think. And then when I saw it, I thought, gods, it's worse than the church almost.
So you think that's what you were looking for, as a place where you could say what you really were, or be who you
or
really
be who we were, or provide a place where people could be who they really are in safety. Yeah, I think that's.
What kind of theater were you seeing that made you think that, oh, that's worse than the church?
Well, the freshmen, the college theaters where everybody's, preening and they're pretending to be someone else, but that's no different from my family pretending to be what they aren't,
Yeah, that's right.
So I wasn't exactly, carried away with that.
Was that at Wellesley or the first place you went to?
First place. Yeah. I didn't do, well, I did a little bit in Wellesley, but I had put it aside, and I didn't come back to it until 5 or 6 years after I left college.
What did you study in college then?
Religion. And that was odd because I came back to it through they had at that time a very controversial department of what they call biblical history. Real challengers, and a lot of people were all, turned around by it.
Who was in there?
Paul Lehman, Louise Battybone Smith, a couple others.
What were they saying?
Well, they were neo-Orthodox, and they didn't go for this liberal stuff that I grew up with. And that sounded they weren't being, nice. And they were really getting to the heart of things. And I had never heard sin approached the way they did. And it was, that was interesting to me. And I became quite a proselytizer for a couple of years.
I did that too in college.
Did
I think
you?
a lot of people do that.
Oh, every once in a while I run into one of those people that has gone on and become a rabid religion person, and they still are.
Never outgrew it.
Right.
I think I grew up in a liberal church, and I missed this sort of mystical dimension. When I got to college, I got involved with people who really.
Where did you go?
Oh, I went to a state college in Baltimore.
Yeah.
But I got involved with a group of people who said God is real and prayer works, and sort of basic stuff. And I thought, this is pretty neat. I mean, my church had been into social justice, migrant workers and all that stuff, and that was pretty neat too, but I had missed this whole dimension, and I was very taken with it. So anyway, sounds similar.
Right.
Filled a great need, for what you thought what I thought church should be.
Right.
So anyway, back to Wellesley. Oh, yes, the religion.
Oh, so I threw the theater out. I went to graduate school, history of religions. Little by little, I got kind of, I lost the enthusiasm. And then one day somebody at the refectory at Union Theological Seminary, dared me to do something.
What?
Well, I have been reading about the medieval mysteries.
The plays, you mean?
Mm-hmm. I was really impressed with them. Some of them are very corny. Some of them are gems. And no, anonymous people, the whole community involved. And the shipwrights were doing the Noah play and things they knew about, They were building ships all the time. So that arc must have been real interesting, They probably ad-libbed a lot of the real, hard facts because, it would come so naturally. So I was, and my friends there were a little bit older. I'll go turn, no, my thing is still on. I'll say I'll be tied up.
Okay. Continue?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see, where were we? The Neo-Orthodox people at Wellesley.
And I was talking to these ministers.
Somebody dared you to do something. You didn't say what it was.
They were starting storefront churches in East Harlem. It was called the East Harlem Protestant Parish, which
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
this was the beginning of it.
Hmm.
So they were doing all kinds of experiments and things, trying to be able to reach people out on the street.
And you were reading the medieval mysteries at the time. Uh-huh.
So they were complaining that nobody would come in. And so I went over one day, and what I expected was true. They were preaching sermons, like as if they were Tillich or Niebuhr, who were there at the time. I mean, those were the golden age. It was the golden age at Union.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, so I was saying, I had just been to see this. And I was saying, well, you can't, that's like talking Latin in the medieval period. And people who don't know Latin and can't read the vernacular either. I was trying to say, you don't have to do it talking down to them. They aren't children. They've had a lot more experience than you or me in some way. Now the medieval people did this. I told them a few things. And then they said, that's real interesting. Why don't you try it? So that's how that started.
Huh. That's how the Harlem group got started.
They were already a parish of
but I mean you're
collective ministry. But that's how my thing got started. And when I got over there, I didn't want to have anything to do with them.
You didn't do Bible stories and stuff?
No. No, I went on the same block, but at first I just took a big pad of newspaper print and crayons or something and started drawing on the tops of car hoods, and people started drawing on the sidewalks, kids.
That's how you started? You took a big pad of paper and started drawing? What'd you draw?
Somebody's car or some building or...
And then this would gather some people around you?
Yeah.
And then what?
Spanish?
Who were these? Were they blacks or Spanish? Who were they?
Both. Sort of borderline.
So then what? I mean, what happened then? What was the next step? You got this crowd around you on the street.
Well, I did that several times, and it was kind of fun seeing all these papers all over the place, people drawing. And I took them home, and they were fascinating to see. So often there was just this grid, Every so often there was a little house in the country, and, so completely unreal.
Were these children?
They ranged from, 7 to, 17, I guess. So then I decided that I'd have to make another step, and then I decided to pick at random the third house, the third floor, and the third door. And so I went to the third house, third floor, and the third door, and the door opened a crack with a chain around it so it couldn't open further, I saw 2 or 3 eyes And they apparently expected somebody else. So the eyes just kept glued at me, and somebody'd say, "What do you want?" And I'd say, "I just want to see if anybody in here wants to draw or to paint." And they thought I meant paint the walls and stuff. Finally, they were giggling and carrying on and decided they were just curious. So they opened the door and began to go back every Wednesday. And I took a pad of paper and we'd talk and draw.
Who was in there?
Midge and one of her men, and Tony, her little girl, and 2, 3 other people who lived there, who I didn't get to know that well. And I told Midge I was going to try to write a play about things that happened on this block. And that intrigued her. She was very dramatic anyway. But I noticed something very funny about this. Is in 51, and they were all very funny. I didn't know what it was. But anyway, they took me to their parties, and they'd prepare me ahead of time. Now, you watch out what this one says, and don't believe that one. And, you know, they sort of give me an outline of what I would run into. I was sort of an exotic.
Very
Yeah.
exotic.
Yeah.
Well, what were you? Why did you do this? Why did you go to the third house and the third door and so forth? I mean, what did you want to happen?
I just wanted to get to know a family.
But why?
I don't know.
Okay.
Not just to write a play. I had a.
Well, I mean, were you trying
I
to?
needed to know how. In a way, it's the kind of thought an anthropologist would have. Of
This
what
ex-
other ways do people approach life, and other than just the superficial look of it.
So a kind of curiosity.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so they took you to parties and prepped you and
Yeah, and
primed you.
I finally said, "What in the world was this guy talking about?" And they kind of giggled and smirked and told me it was heroin, and I never heard of heroin. Nobody else had at the time. And so I asked all about that. Then I realized that Midge was on it, and a lot of the people that wandered in and out, that they were stoned. That was what was the matter with them, but I didn't recognize it. So then I began to get very fascinated with addiction. And then I had to sort of struggle through the whole thing of whether you use art to convey a message. Because at that point I thought you did.
And you felt like you might want to?
Yeah, I felt like that's what I was going to do. But while I was doing it, I was not happy with the way it came out. When the people were just...
More like a sermon than anything.
Yeah. When the characters were delivering what I thought they should deliver, they just weren't alive.
Was this the first play you did?
Yeah.
How did that come to be? I mean, from you saw the addiction and you heard them talk about heroin, and so you just decided to write a play. So you wrote one.
Yeah, and I incorporated some of my own things in it, such as my brother. So it was a brother-sister thing. And the brother is on drugs, and it's fine with him until he sees his sister starting, and then it's another thing. And I was fascinated with the idea of addiction. I realized that I had my own addictions. Needing things without which you would feel you can't live, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't altogether foreign to a drug addiction. There was a little book that was written later called Love and Addiction.
Mhm.
And that said it pretty well. And that kind of love is not a real thing. But it goes as the real thing a good bit of the time.
Yeah. There's a woman who's written a book called Addictive Relationships, which is addressing that same thing.
Yeah.
So anyway,
The
play didn't work. Is that right? Is that what you said?
No.
Oh.
No. When I was trying to make it propagandize,
Yeah.
it didn't work.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, right. And so finally the characters began to get a mind of their own, and I followed them, and that's when it became
The characters or the actors?
the characters.
Huh.
Yeah, that's interesting because I did have the characters in mind then. Later I developed the characters out of the available people, but then I was looking for people in the usual sense.
Mm-hmm.
Although it was different in one sense, in that once they fell into that character and it wasn't right for them, I'd change it all around to suit them. So it did come out of them, like it does in a way from these. And then little by little, I needed information. They gave me a deadline to have it ready by, to do it in the street, the parish.
Oh, so you were still connected with them?
Yes, only when we were never on the street.
Only behind closed doors?
Only over at Union Seminary.
Oh.
I ran with a completely different crowd on 100th Street than they did.
You were with the heroin addict.
Yeah, I was with the heroin addicts. Right. So they were pressing me to get something done, and they set April 23rd or 21st, and I began to have to really push to get things done. And I had to make decisions such as, I had a junkie in the play who had a very big part, and that I think that one of those guys that I knew would do it. And I really didn't know from one day to the next when they would show up, strung out. So I made an exception, and I advertised. I left a little card on all the acting schools. I can always remember that thing. Actor for the streets, unusual conditions. Of course, there'd never been any street theater, then. A week's run, and set up at auditions. And I had, 15, 20 people come, none of whom would do. There was this one white guy, and I was a little disappointed that it was, a white guy. But he had grown up in a tenement, and he had that edge. And I felt like if any of them could fit in, he could. So he got it. But I said, I've written about this a lot. I said, now you understand, we're not going to do it the way you're used to. We're going to do it. You are going to follow their ways. They're not going to follow your ways. He said, oh, that's fine. And
didn't work, huh?
And of course not. I mean, he wanted to have them sort of hold still while he's doing his speech about what it does to you. And, and he, little by little, got me to go along with him until one day, none of them showed up. And we had 2 weeks, and I didn't have anything. So I went home, and I had a very bad weekend. And I suddenly realized I had really betrayed them. So I went back, and I went up and down steps and out on fire escapes and roofs trying to find them. To say, I know I let you down. This was going to be yours, and I just want you to give me another chance. So I didn't know if they'd come back. Their faces were closed. I thought it was over. So at rehearsal, Neil, the actor, showed up, of course, but then they were very late. They came, and they were indifferent, totally not there. None of that enthusiasm. So what I had to do was to just say, now this is your play. You're the experts in this play. It's about this street. You have had a part in making it. I want to do that. So let's just try. So they waited to give me a chance to see if I could put him down, and I did over and over again. Every time I did make him go over something, they got a little bit lighter, a little bit brighter, until finally they were these graceful presences on the stage. It just took my breath, and he was sort of plodding.
Beaten down.
He was sort of pedestrian in comparison. And he went home looking pretty grim. And so I thought, well, we'll do it without him, somehow, if he cut that. But he did it. But he's never acted since. So that's how that came about.
So what did you do with the play once it was together? Where'd you present it?
Well, the parish acted as producer, so I could hear them pounding on the stage, making this portable stage, and just at this time when those actors showed up, I could hear them, the hammers ringing. And they moved it from one block to another for 5 nights only. And then it turned out to be one of those sensational things. Variety made a better headline out of it, and Life magazine came. Jackie Robinson was flown in from a doubleheader. New Yorker, everything. I was really famous for about
15 minutes.
Right.
You had your 15.
Right. And there it was, I thought, still bearing the scars of thinking I can't write at all. So just for fun, I sent it into the best short plays, and I got into the best short plays.
Had
So
you
then-
learned to spell yet by then?
I was beginning to, yeah.
So then what happened?
Well, we don't want to go through all that, but
No, I do. I mean, the story of the development of all this is interesting to me.
well, then I tried to get the parish to do another one. I wanted to write a sequel. But on the strength of all the publicity about heroin suddenly hitting all the papers everywhere, it was like the editor of Variety said, this broke the drug story. So everywhere it was, and so it was a big thing for proposals and stuff. And so they all of a sudden got $40,000, which was an immense sum, it seemed then,
The parish got this.
to buy a farm in Westchester County, near Peekskill, which they did. And they formed the narcotics company. All of a sudden, they were up to their necks with, awash with people who were in real, Danny Carlson had just started Narcotics Anonymous. I had invited him to come because I had to call him and ask him some information. Most of my information came from the streets. Bob Crouch, who was the connection in the play, knew the guys who sold the drugs. And turned 5 years later, that street was named the most heavy drug traffic in all of Harlem. Maybe because of the play.
Hopefully.
So
So you wanted to do a sequel
I wanted to do a sequel, and they were up to their necks with
program.
the ramifications
Yeah.
of drugs. And everybody in town was calling them, asking them for help and advice. And they were having to bone up on it. Then I went to other people in town, trying to find somebody who would produce it. Never never thinking, well, shoot, I'll do it myself. That was absolutely unthinkable.
Hmm.
It seems strange to say it now, but I couldn't imagine doing that.
Hmm.
So after a year or two, I gave up. And meanwhile, having such a lot of publicity sort of opened up some of the doors of the theater, and I became a new dramatist, the only one who had written one act play and only one act play.
You became a new dramatist?
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, it was set up very just about that time before by some of the older dramatists to help young ones see their things staged. We got free tickets. We could be participants, observers on Broadway plays with a playwright who we would be assigned to, which is how I came through that experience. And that was, I really felt like completely out of place.
Why?
Well, they were all trying to emulate The Moon is Blue and real popular things at the time. I don't know if that's the name of the play, but
It is.
it is. I mean, they were all trying to do something that would be commercially acceptable, and they weren't at all interested.
Why did they choose you then?
I don't know. I think just because of the publicity. They thought they'd be foolish if they didn't. So they didn't even require me to send in a play. I wouldn't have had one to send.
So you didn't fit into that scene?
No, I did go and I did, see a lot of shows and things. And I was so bored with them. Once that audience happened on 100th Street, ever after that, it was very pale indoors. I mean, I was spoiled. It was just.
What about the off-Broadway type of scene? I mean, was that intriguing to you?
Yeah, I did some things later. Of course, that wasn't going at that in the early 50s much. I don't think there was. I think Cafe Chino was just beginning. Yeah, I think that was one of the early ones in Ellen Stewart's thing. But I'm not sure that they went back that early. I did work for a while with the Open Theater with Joe and Jean-Claude. And I found that very refreshing. But they once asked me to do a class, and I introduced my idea of acting. And I saw this look of utter disgust on the faces of the actors, I was saying, I'd like something out of your own life. That did it. They don't want anything out of their own lives. That was the last thing they wanted. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. That emphasis makes me think about the women's movement too. I mean, which you sort of foreshadow in a way in starting with the personal, starting with the own life, starting with the own stories.
Yeah.
And then it becomes political as you go into it. It's not political in any sense when you begin, but it takes on that dimension if you tell the truth about it. I mean, that's what they always said at the beginning of this wave of the women's movement. If we can tell the truth about our lives, then we can change the world. Same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Say some more about the audience. You said something about once you saw that audience on the street, you weren't content with the audience inside.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to write about it a number of times. But the barrier between audience and actor just wasn't there. I mean, they would talk. They didn't have the audience role implanted as people in Potsdam do. And so they would talk, and I suspected that might happen. So when we rehearsed, I had a whole bunch of noisemakers and things. I knew there would be noise that they'd have to talk over in between. And so they get used to talking. A syllable hit the air at the same time that a noise did.
Garbage truck go by.
Right? Or even a percussive thing like something dropping out of a window. Then they use it as an offbeat and come in on the, again, right after that sound, which we do when we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And something interrupts, we say that word again. So then I think I said, now if anybody answers you, I didn't know for sure, but I had a funny feeling. If anybody answers you, no, I think I was surprised. There's a place where the junkie runs on stage. And he's very desperate. He says, has anybody seen Porce? You know, the guy with the brown suit and so on. Have you seen Porce? And a whole pie of the audience was shouting, yeah, he's over there. You know, pointing.
Oh.
Or he went that way, something like that. And so the actor would have to react to that. They couldn't just act like it didn't happen the way, you know, off-Broadway is. I went to the most wonderful production of Day Top, which was a narcotics community. And they were at La Mama long years ago. And it was really their lives and what they went through. And it was so moving and so beautiful. In the end, they came towards whoever was in the audience. I happened to be on the front row. Wasn't inappropriate. And he said it to this man next to me, and the man just was uncomfortable, you know, and embarrassed. And I just reached for him, you know, and a few other people, they were going to all sides of that thing. Now that would have gone over in the streets, you know, because there was this play back and forth, but the theater people were not used to it. They were conditioned not to do that. They were conditioned to separate everything. So the street, the people are part of it. And what they're going to say, you don't know, but you know when they're likely to. So the actors, in rehearsing, they sort of deal with what might happen, and then they go right on in. And that's what the later street theater did too. They had a lot more, even in the 60s.
Mm-hmm. Interaction.
Yeah, because people were less inhibited even. And so it's like, it's the difference between dealing with a few instruments up on the stage, or a whole 300 or 400 instruments that are somehow in this thing together. In comparison, the indoor audience seems to be like little peepers, you know, being voyeurs at something and pretending like they're not there.
How does this relate to the the audience at the state park now?
Well, that's interesting because when we used to perform downtown and around different places, the park is not the first place we perform at all. We performed in the hollers and people's backyards and stuff. And people were freer, although they're shyer here in the streets. There was something of that feeling here. In Pipestem, we're getting so many tourists, and a few local people. And that's a whole new thing. I mean, we've lost the street audience, but we've found another audience, and we're apparently we're bringing something of the old with us, so that the new audience is sort of flabbergasted in a way, and sort of knocked off their roles. Not during it, or maybe it's happening during it, but then afterwards. And that 3 or 4 years ago, I was really mystified by it. I just didn't know what to make of it.
Of what?
The audience.
And what about them?
They didn't act like an audience.
What did they act like?
Something still a different thing from the street audience. It was almost as if by identifying with these just plain people up there who took their roles off, that the audience, in a sense, also took a chance of removing their role as audience and speaking. And I've seen couples who come and the woman starts to talk and the man looks at her like, my God, where's that coming from? You know, almost like, do I know this woman? And I've seen the women the same way.
So there's an openness on the part of the people who speak afterwards?
Yeah.
That seems unusual. Yeah, it does.
Maybe you think that it's because they are tourists. And you said something about because you're playing to tourists, it's a different kind of audience. I mean, they've left the sanctity of their own home by hopping into their car or their trailer or their tent or whatever, and they've gone off into a different world. So maybe they can approach viewing a play from a totally different perspective also.
That's very possible. We took the show to Charleston, to the Cultural Center for their community theater thing. And partly that's what I wanted to find out, what would happen to them in that kind of alien atmosphere of a posh, chandeliered theater, you know?
What would happen to the actors?
And what happened?
Nothing. I could almost hear the cicadas. You know, they took their time, they weren't rushed. All the others seemed frantic.
I was thinking about that last night when I was looking at the plaza. This is so low-keyed in some ways, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
You know, what if you would think of a troupe coming onto the stage and just kind of whirling around and doing all this activity and creating all this energy? Well, you don't have to, you know.
Right. That's what's so amazing. Last week, this woman came up afterwards and she said, you know, we didn't expect anything like this. He brought Cracker Jacks and popcorn and other things. We thought we'd have, you know, just entertainment. And she said, look at it. They hadn't touched it. She said, I wouldn't have opened one of those things even if I'd thought of it. Because it would disturb that quiet thing that happens.
Well, what was the audience response in Charleston?
A woman said, oh, I'm so glad. She went on for about 5 or 10 minutes. She said, I'm from so-and-so, New Jersey, and I feel like I could go back home. And there are all kinds of stories, and I've always dreamt of maybe doing so, maybe. And she went on and on about it, and we got kind of interested in her hometown. And then they had a critic from New York, Stanley Harrison is his name. He's writing a book on acting. And to get our expenses from the Arts Council, we had to stay the next morning and hear the critique. So all of the theaters, they were doing Golden Pond and in our town. And you know, all the Spoon River and all these things. And he was a little man with a white mustache that was twisted up hair, beautiful white coiffed hair, and a natty little suit, And he started in on everybody, and he gave a very thorough and I suppose very good analysis of each one, about the understanding of the play, and we taped his thing of us, by the way. Then he got to Eco Theater, and he said things like, words fail me. The whole thing is so phony. You say these actors are not, that they're real. But this man on the railroad, he's not working for the railroad now. And this man is this. And this Kathy, this whatever her young name is, that young black woman, she has a tonal variety of about 3 notes. And I thought I would die. I wanted at the end, halfway through, to go up on top of a tower, bite a cyanide pill, and jump. So depressing. And so George Allen was there, who's a champion of ours.
This critic didn't perceive anything that you were doing?
No.
He didn't understand anything?
He didn't like anything. And Lucinda was, as Miss Daisy had a scene where she came out on the front porch and swept the dust off.
I remember that.
And then she realizes she might have swept it in somebody's eyes. Well, there was an awful lot of dust on that stage. And she swept it into 3 people's eyes who had come with us, and they didn't seem to mind at all. He said, if I had been sitting on that front seat, that would have been the beginning of World War III.
What an elegant
Yeah.
attitude.
So, but that aside from that, they could keep their thing, and the few people who were there, because it was running all day long, so it didn't have real audiences all day, because there were 20 or 30 of us. See, I felt okay about it. They could do it anywhere.
What did you said somebody stood up after him. You were about to tell that.
George.
Oh, George Allen got all excited about it because he's an old hard-nosed journalist from Washington, and he's been down several times, and he says things like he's never seen an audience so riveted, and he's seen many of them. And he began to challenge him, and the man said, I don't want to talk anymore about it. He said, if you all want to perform for Hinton audiences, just go right to it. So some of my people were hurt, but not that hurt. They thought he was really crazy.
All that story sort of points out to me what you're doing that's different from what theater, sort of professional or non-professional, is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you describe what you're trying to do? It's sort of a basically different understanding, or basically different purpose in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's a whole different theory of what performance is. Just this year I realized perform, per means through, right? And form means some kind of vessel. And the person flows through the form. Now, if you, all right, let's take musicians. Schoenberg wrote in the Times recently that all the brilliant new pianists are marvelous technically, but there's nothing happening.
Nobody home.
All over the world, right? So that the pianist is not flowing through it, he's just reproducing the notes. And I think that's what we're talking about. I think that's what the aim of acting has been to. I think this has been a whole cultural thing to reduce, even in anthropology, to reduce the presence of the anthropologist as much as possible, which is not really possible. But it's still this emphasis on that has come from the scientific thing. And so when I was a little girl, I went across the river to the Symphony Hall, Music Hall in Cincinnati. And every other Friday afternoon was the children's time. And our school sent the kids who were supposed to go, and I went. And I heard Rachmaninoff and Levine and Hoffman and all the great guys, come through. And I remember particularly Rachmaninoff would be hard not to. He'd come in with this tragic look that was heightened, I'm sure, by our presence.
A group of children.
Gabbing and fluttering, and, rustling everything. And it was like he would sit down, he wouldn't even look at us, And he even rested his tails and sat down. And I don't know what happened to the rest of the kids, but within a few minutes, something came across to me that just absolutely held me in a spell. The same piece played by people today doesn't. Unless you find a very unusual person who's able to survive the professional music world. And that's quite an achievement to keep on consistently putting out, Ashkenazi started out with this presence in the music. And little by little, it's sort of gone away, and he's now a technician.
Mm.
It's so grinding and grueling, I guess.
Yeah. So is the aim of what you're doing to provide form that people can
Phil,
come through?
right. Exactly. You hit it right on the head.
And why?
Why what?
Why do you want to do that?
Because it nourishes me.
How does it nourish you?
Oh, come on now. Don't be so literal.
Why not?
You know damn well what I'm talking about.
I know, but I want you to say it.
Yeah, I know you do. It's all connected. You and I are connected.
Mm-hmm.
But we spend a good bit of our life trying to deny that for all kinds of reasons. Some of which are pretty valid as a protection. So if there is a place where safely you can do this without the dangers that you might have if you open up yourself really and be really vulnerable to a person who you don't know that person well enough to know whether they're going to wound you or dredge up a lot of old things that you've passed and don't want to have anything to do with it again, and you vowed you never would do anything again. You can never be guaranteed it won't happen again. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the stage is a safe place. You notice Charlie said that when he first got in the car?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had written him a note saying, if you can open yourself up to feeling more, get a little closer to this. That was not his story, by the way.
Oh.
Killing the man.
Oh.
That's another vet's story.
How about saving the man who was drowning in the other setting? in the present setting. You know, he was describing how they pulled this man
That's in
over.
another play that I wrote
Oh,
called Four Men and a Monster, which we revived here. It was done professionally, but I hated it. We did it here on Powell's Creek with Powell's Creek people. It's about three men who go to the city to try to, make good so they can get a little shop and be all right. And they agree to commit a crime. And by accident, Charlie, who plays his part of Hal, kills his best buddy. They're like a family. These two men had saved this guy, and that was their child. It was very touching. And many people said, "What happened to Hal after the play?" So but he didn't understand what I meant by safety.
Yeah.
I've lost track, I think, about what he was thinking it meant. But he often takes me very literally, and I have to explain.
well, what does it mean, safety? It's the safety of the stage.
Well,
You know, one of the reasons I'm asking you all these obvious things is that if I am going to write for children, either you or I has to distill this in some way.
yes, that's why I've been making faces about your writing for children. It's a little hard to make.
But I don't
much
know,
of this.
if this is true, then children know this as well as anybody else.
That's true. If you can approach it from that angle, they know phoniness when they see it.
They know when they can be real and
Yeah.
how, and they know when it's safe. And
Okay.
they know all this too.
Right. Okay.
They know it better than we do.
Yeah. Okay. If you can do that, that's great, because I think there is mine came from my childhood.
But Charlie was, I think where he was yesterday and using the word safety and defining that was that he was on the stage, which is higher up, and it's a place where he's safe because nobody is going to go rushing up on the stage and grab him or hit him or pull him up and kiss him or anything. I mean, he's in a place that he is safe. It's like when you're in a treehouse, you're up and out of the way and you're safe.
No, but he was saying he wasn't safe up there because he's up there where everybody can see him and attack him too. I mean, that's another. He's in the spotlight. He's not hidden, and that's where he was coming from. And then I think when I said, "Well, this is a place where people are not going to absolutely be sure this is you," there's a little. Especially since it's never exactly the same as them. Then they lose the safety. See?
So there has to be the intervention of a playwright into this.
I'm afraid so.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to think that this could just spontaneously happen, but I think, and it might, I think, well, it could. I mean, you never know what kind of person might be. You start up something,
Start telling a story and then just get in deeper and deeper and more honest in the story. That might happen spontaneously.
It's an interesting thing about stories, though. I mean, people around here are wonderful storytellers. But they always abstract themselves from it.
4, 5, 6, 7, testing.
I'll change 1 or 2 lines.
Huh. You don't have to change much.
I noticed you asked him, how do you keep it fresh?
Yeah.
What did he say? He said,
He didn't say anything for a long time. He sort of got off into something else. What did he say? I can't even remember.
That's the kind of thing I mean. He said something silly at first, and then he came back to it. This is what is. My first thought was. He said,
No, it's like the first time. Right?
Something like that.
No.
He finally said, I don't know how I keep it fresh. Or something like that. And it's true.
I've sometimes likened it
What?
to words we use over and over again. And they can get very tired. Like, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it can be very boring.
Mm-hmm.
But then if it isn't boring, I mean, if it really is expressing something that's there, it doesn't matter how often you say it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't bear just saying once.
That's true.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you what you thought of that. What you thought about this. Does what you're doing and what you've done, what you built and the sort of foundations of it and the reasons for it have anything to do, or what does it have to do with your being a woman?
A lot and nothing.
Yeah.
We took a bet on what you would say to that, and that's exactly what we decided to say.
No kidding. Really?
I mean, we didn't really take a formal bet, but that's what we were talking about.
Well, that's nice. So we don't have to talk about it.
No, we do have to talk about it.
Hmm. Well, you can tell in some of the scenes that there's a sort of there's always a little feminist overcast.
Mm-hmm. Or at least humanist.
Yeah, right. People always enjoy Sims's thing. I heard they were doing it. She already gets a little spiel. Hiring girls, I mean. Um, and Waiting Woman, which you didn't see, very much of a turnaround, really. You never saw.
I think I might have.
Okay. I'll just
Did Lucinda do that?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Crying.
Uh-huh.
This woman who gets in her mail this morning a letter that belongs next door saying Ms. Flossie Freeman. And she's very irritated when that happens. Ms. Flossie Freeman. You know, as if in old San Lauderdale, he just loved it. He loved everything. And why he won't even take a little bit of comfort on the side. I know. I tried him out that day. He came over to fix the plumbing. And from that, this whole thing started when Lucinda one day said, you know what, I really wish I had a scene that really challenged me. Right at just at this point. Well, the next step. So this scene came out of that. It has 3 or 4 recognitions in it. And it's a really virtuoso kind of piece, really. Anyway, he goes through this Flossie Freeman who can just, you know, she just goes where she wants to. And then look at me, here I am waiting. And what am I waiting for? I waited till the kids were born. I waited till I got married and the kids born, and the kids graduate, the kids married, and their grandchildren. Sometimes I ask myself, what am I waiting for? And she's so long waiting for him to come. He gives the 4 whistles, 2 long, 2 short, 2 long. And I know I have just 14 minutes to get biscuits in the oven piping hot. He'll come through the doors, big old arms open. And the kids hear this little railroad thing, and they come running to, well, he used to. You can hear me now. And then she goes, wonder when he's coming, I never know when and all that. But I never know. If I cook it and he doesn't come, he comes in and says, what's this? Shoe leather and hard to take. I'm not there anymore, you have to take chances around here. I don't know where you are or where you're gonna come. You say you come in here 3 hours later on, you say, I had dropped your boys. And then she goes back into herself. Oh, and then she says, see this letter? Ms. Flossie Freeman? Ms. Flossie Freeman doesn't have supper waiting for her. Ms. Flossie Freeman has her own car. Has her own job. She has her own name. She covers it up and throws it down. And all of a sudden, she wants milk. Picks it up, flattens it out. Always like what's happening. And she straightens it out. She said, when I was young, I wanted to be a missionary in some foreign country. Or if I wasn't worthy,
So it's a hierarchy with the director at the top?
yeah. And lip service to the playwright. Oh, little old 6-inch fish on it with a line. Oh, you young girls, don't you ever marry somebody says he can't live without you. The first thing they'll do is to go home and find somebody else that can't live with you. Frozen more.
I mean, as they put the thing in research. So I would say.
And then she begins to piece it all back. And she meditates him again. We find our woman. All along. I don't need it.
All he wants to do is provide.
Things. My life. Oh. And this outbreak of rage show buster. I don't know. I already left. She whirls around and marches off, and at the mid-step, she stops.
So you're aiming to put them together, the playwright and the director.
Yeah, but I also want to say there are certain directors that don't take away the authority from either one. They're precious and they're rare, I think. So, many years ago, when we were both very young, when we were very, very young, I left you. Probably will be talking and thinking of writers, especially people who have appreciation.
Yeah, I remember that.
Wow.
Mm. Sort of dumping it back.
So you said you're collecting playwright director.
I never knew what to make of that because it was like a very feminist thing, and yet dumping it back into our laps.
How often,
We're in the company.
But it has to be, I mean, there's nobody else that.
No, that's her scene.
Oh,
Maybe
that
in a
would
year
be,
or two.
that would be hard to find somebody to fit, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You'd have to be really gutsy to do that one, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
I suppose around here,
Well, any place.
Yeah.
I think any place.
boy, that's powerful.
Okay, you're signed up.
All right.
Oh. So I that's always been sort of an interesting scene because it's hard to.
What was the audience reaction to that?
Oh, many women, said, "Oh, I just." And then some people came up and said, "I never."
We've only just done that here.
No, this is not street theater. This is eco theater. But we did it in Charleston. People,
Was it because you were?
I think women, older women particularly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
Well, there were sort of some overtones of it in that thing that woman did last night. The woman with the pink slacks. Of, what am I for and what am I about now?
Yes, yeah.
Now that
That's
I'm
a
done with my
typical-
function.
That's a typical little town
Mm-hmm.
woman's plight.
Mm-hmm.
That was originally Lucinda's scene too.
Mm-hmm.
But Susie has done some interesting things with it.
Lucinda's a real loss, isn't she?
Yeah.
She had a lot of energy, I remember, and real sort of vital and.
Yeah.
Well, I guess.
You could do it. Why couldn't you do it?
Oh, I can't do it.
Do you ever do any scenes?
Mm-mm.
Not enough distance, huh?
No. I can do them sort of like this, where I'm not actually doing it. I can do that all right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the difference is.
I have a few more things, but mostly we've covered everything I put down just by telling the story and going off on digressions. Do you have a sense of yourself as it seems to me like, from what you've described of your roots and your whole process, that you're really sort of on target or something with yourself. I mean, you really are coming out of a clear kind of center that has that
Becomes clearer all the time.
yeah. But you're holding to a sort of, it's almost like a vocation, like a calling.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have a sense of that, or is
Yeah, I do.
what is it?
What is the call?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I stumbled on something quite by accident. Well, nothing is ever really that accidental. And no one else seemed to know about it in our modern life. And it felt like it really illuminated some of the mysterious things that we don't know much about in ancient life. And that it was right there. I mean, you didn't have to go to school. You didn't have to do a lot of these things. In fact, that probably muddied it up. And it was such an important kind of discovery that extended really beyond just the theater.
Did you go to a church that had any theatrical?
And that in this way, the connections, it made connections with a lot of things. I guess I've always felt academically sort of, there's anthropology and religion and theater, and I'm sort of muddling around in the middle between those three, where they all sort of
So you think that's what you were looking for as a place where you could say
are all involved and not separatable as they are as academic fields, So, yeah, I think there's a certain excitement about the history of being part of the history, or rediscovering something.
What is it that you're bringing to light that has been fragmented and separated and disconnected?
Well, from all we know about early days, there wasn't a theater, and there wasn't religion, and there wasn't, healing. They were sometimes the same person was doing the whole thing. The priests and the actors were the same, and the healers. and specialization began to separate them. And in so doing, some very important things were lost. So in this couple of scenes, that scene with Kathy where she said, "We're going to make history," all those things are sort of tongue-in-cheek
Mm-hmm.
in her disgust.
What were they saying?
I mean, I'm poking a little bit of fun at myself, but I'm aware that that's there.
I was thinking about how carefully you appear to work, like how you came here and you just kind of waited and got to know people, and you didn't rush and push and goad, and you didn't do that. And you're, from what I can sense of your life, it has a kind of leisurely quality about it. Now, I'm sure it's not on the daily level, but there's something about it that strikes me as sort of slow and patient and very careful and sort of, it's like paying attention in the way that the mystics like Meister Eckhart would describe it. It's paying attention in that kind of way.
Right.
And
Meister Eckhart is just exactly the right person for sight. Yeah.
I like him. I've been reading him for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
John Solo reintroduced me again to him. And the whole idea, and John, who's a theologian, sees it as well, I've got some stuff upstairs you might want to take with you. He has a statement that I think says it very well. Everything is being, and we're all parts of that. And, this is why you probably latched on to the connectedness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've sort of been steeping myself in the sermons anyway.
Yeah.
That's all. Because I couldn't tolerate traditional Christian theology anymore. So it just seemed like, oh, here's something I can buy.
Right. Right.
Anyway, there's a nice quality about, or feel about your life and your work, that you go sort of step by step and you follow.
I'm sort of conservative in a
Well,
funny way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't dash around and,
No. For instance, in this town, I've lived here a year and a half, and I'm quite content that nobody really knows what I'm doing. Fran does, and a few people do, but the townspeople know I'm up to something, but they...
And you don't care that they don't know?
No.
Huh.
It leaves me more time, really.
But you're really not conservative in what you're really doing. I mean, you're doing something that's terribly non-traditional, and I mean, you're off the beaten track. You're doing theater that's not theater. You're working with audiences that aren't audiences. You're writing plays that aren't even plays. I mean, that's conservative.
Well, not in that sense, but conserving or something.
It's wonderful.
Part of it comes out of a security that I think many people don't have. And I didn't have, I don't think, all the time.
Where did you get it?
From I think each time I did it, it worked. It worked even according to establishment,
Security,
standards.
but yet you were cut down. I mean, this Harrison character said it was terrible.
But that was only one, and who cares about him? She's in a different ballpark. He's not. They're not in the same league.
He was threatened that these little nobodies from Hinton had presence on the stage. That's really what was going on. they had presence in a sense, not the wide abilities and training that the great actors have, but the way Sims Wicker pulls the walking down. Laurence Olivier couldn't do without a month of effort at it. It's so ingrained to pull that watch out of his pocket that way. You know?
Yeah.
So by being actually the experts in what they're doing, we bypass all that stuff. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
going to do Chekhov. And somebody said to Lucinda, "Well, could you do Mary Queen of Scots?" And Lucy was very embarrassed later when she said, "Well, I don't know her."
Oh, that's great.
And that was right on, but
Yes,
she
that
was
was
embarrassed that it revealed her ignorance, you know. Um, it's taken almost all this time for me to be as secure as I am, I must say.
Secure about what you're doing.
Because sometimes I would, well, for example, I went to this artist colony over in Virginia for a month in April, March,
Yeah, that's,
Right.
you wrote me about that,
Yeah.
Sweetbriar.
and there was a playwright there. He was going back into production in New York, and she was dreading it. And I just felt for her. I knew what she was going through. She was hoping that this director would be an angel, you know. So every other evening, an artist would present their stuff, you know, and the rest of us would go and see what they're doing. And I've been there 2 times before, and I never talked about eco theater because they're so very professional.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought the night before she left it might be nice if I could present eco theater and give her at least a little send off to know that somewhere there's something different.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought maybe when I announced it that maybe 4 or 5 might come who I'd gotten to know, and most of them came. There were about 20, and I talked just informally about it and about the people. I read 2 or 3 scenes. And to my shock, they were all, instead of sort of, well, this is kind of, you know, this is amateur stuff. They were all almost wistful in the questions they asked. And I thought things have really changed because either I've changed that much in my assurance, in my ability to talk about it, or they have begun to feel how cut off they are from the community.
Mm-hmm.
And they would talk to me, a composer would say, "I live on 8th Street East, 7th. He said, and it's just this cacophony when I go out in the streets to walk my dog, and it fascinates me. And these 3 guys are on the corner, I've gotten to know them, and we talked. And he said, I just feel like there's all kinds of things that they could do musically. And here he's off writing, you know, closet modern music, see? But he has that kind of, this touched off that feeling in him.
Mm-hmm. He knows.
And the others were all, you know, say, you really work with real people. And what they're saying is that their feeling about the people who buy their pictures or come to performances is they have contempt for them.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they're stupid, they're dense, and they don't appreciate anything. They're jaded.
Consumers. Blind consumers.
And then it comes back to Brownell,
Mm-hmm.
the Kentucky guy is introduced to me, who says this is our source. And it is. And this is maybe why, you know, when artists go out into the community, their reaction to it has become weirder than ever. And to wear these, you know, crazy clothes and everything to make themselves even more apart. And sort of rub the noses of people in it. Not to have any kind of communication. Fascinating. How we've distanced ourselves from our, the artist community doesn't even think of any other way. And the funny thing is, oh my God, after reading Brownell, I thought, oh, Maryat, you hypocrite. When you get with a bunch of artists, you just join right in and you agree that the audiences are dull and terrible. And then meanwhile, over here in secret, you love your audiences. And you're getting so much from them. They're teaching you things. They do. They teach me something almost every night. And they have much greater depths of perception than we ever think they do. And I mentioned the tourists, and they're just tourists. And many of them have gone to a few plays. They're not. The audience we're reaching now is not a street audience, and it's not the rural audience. It's sort of a in-between thing. I'm sorry we're not reaching the rural audience more, but right now, I don't have time to do that. I hope, some of these companies will.
You know what Lucy Lepard, the art critic I mentioned before, who's involved with the Alliance, says about art is that, and this is in the preface to a book she did about, where she went back to Neolithic stone formations in England in particular. And the book is called Overlay, and it's a study of those and contemporary artists who she feels have the same feeling about their work and their relationship to the earth in particular as did some of the original stone builders. And she says, art in this culture is either elevated to this funny position and made into something so mysterious and magical that only a few chosen people can be artists, or so debased in the culture that it's the first thing that's cut out from elementary schools when they have a budget shortage. And, and then I was thinking that that's the same thing that's been done with women, elevated or debased, the sort of virgin, the whore kind of contrast. And yet it's our life, I mean, it really is at the center, but it's so fearsome that we do that with it or that with it. It's like, it's powerful, such a source place. I think you might be interested in her work.
Well, that is interesting. And I'm interested in this alliance thing that I never heard of before until Mark and you.
I would like to know something.
Yeah.
Are you successful? Do you feel as if you are successful?
Why?
I just wondered. I thought that. The first question that Mary Claire asked you was kind of, where do you go from here, or what are you chewing on, or what are you doing? And it sounds like you have had so many successes along the way, and yet you continue to move forward. That some people measure their inadequacies or don't recognize success and continue to move on because it's not successful enough for them. And I just wonder how you viewed what you have done.
Well, right now, I don't guess I'm looking for. I guess what I'm looking to see is that whether this can be replicated or not without me, I think is the step that Kentucky is interested in. But either way, it doesn't affect me. I would rather that the idea is replicatable, and that all it needs is to, a making up standards and pattern for companies so that they won't be swallowed up in a community theater. Addie Davis called up and she said, this man, after we performed at Jolo, he said, oh, this is just wonderful, and I have lights and a dimmer board. I used to work in the theater, and now we can do a real play. She said, what do I do now? In real panic.
Mhm.
And I could handle that, because of my experience, but she can't.
Mhm.
So what she needs is it in black and white. Well, we can't do that. This is what we do.
Or she needs to know the value of what she's doing so deeply that the question is just irrelevant.
Yeah, but she can't know that
Mhm.
because she's never seen plays.
Mhm.
See?
Mhm.
I mean, she's at a real, that may come. But right now, feels sold on this, and this has meant a lot to her and changed her and everything. Her husband about to give her a divorce about it. But, every time he sees anything eco theater come in, it's like, oh my, it's a big argument, But they need some kind of thing that they can fall back on. That gives them a little bit more authority, because after all, this guy who's been in the theater has authority behind him.
Anybody with a dinner board's got authority.
Right.
That's what it takes.
Right. So they can either be assimilated, they can be annexed, or they can be crushed. Even in, here in West Virginia.
Well, how will she get that kind of authority in herself?
Well, first of all, I think she needs to have something in black and white. It says eco theater is not professional. The experts are the people in the community, not people who've ever worked in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
The sort of philosophy of it.
Right. And that's one of the first things. Well, I've been working on it now for a year, and I've got all kinds of different versions, and I've used them when I go to a seed group in McDowell County. What I do is say, okay, before we start, I pass it out, and I say, okay, you take the first one, and you take the third one, and you take, and they read it over, and then they tell it their own way. And sometimes they add things to it that are very important, rather than just reading it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that what you're doing, you're educating, and that's crucial. You're telling them what they're doing, why it's so powerful, why it works.
Yeah.
So they won't be co-opted in one way or another.
Yeah, it's to help them avoid traps.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to fall into.
Mm-hmm.
That anybody would fall into.
Is there anybody else that you know of in the country or the world that's doing anything like you?
Not exactly, no. And Joe almost always asks the audience, have you ever seen anything like this?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad he does, because they always say no.
Mm-hmm.
Then one woman said, oh, yes. And after, we kind of lost track of her. And afterwards, I asked her, and she said, well, she had done some improvisations in a class at WVU, a purely conservative, conventional theater. And she was sort of answering a little bit defensively. Well, the parish acted as producer, so they may be doing it. They may not be doing it on the scale that I am. I hope that.
Or with the clarity, either.
See those magazines on the table there?
Yeah.
Those all have articles about it in there.
Huh. About eco theater?
Yeah, for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep expecting somebody reading those to send me something that says, I'm in Juneau, Alaska.
Doing something somewhere,
And
yeah.
we have an Eskimo group,
Huh.
or something like that.
Uh-huh.
It hasn't flushed anyone out yet.
Uh-huh.
On the other hand, I've got a whole book of letters from people who want to have more information, or See, I've been looking for something like this. Can you put me on to other reading and stuff like that?
We didn't meet anybody who was doing it. I mean, we met some feminist theater groups, like there's one in Minneapolis at the foot of the mountain.
Yeah, I've been in touch with them.
Yeah, and they do a collaborative process with the playwright and actors, based on their own lives. But it's very metropolitan and professional. It's a professional company.
That's the interesting thing about the women's theater, and I don't think you should quote me on this.
Okay. Want me to turn it off?
Yeah.
All right. Let's finish up. I'm tired. You must be tired too. Well, I must be tired too.
Do you want to have some
I think I'd want to get going.
Yeah.
Go back home.
All right.
Sort of a long drive.
Yeah.
I think, what you're doing is replicable. I can't figure out why it wouldn't be. Except it would take somebody who was sort of a patient listener with a big heart to sort of, and a regard for people. I mean,
That's not too unusual.
well, no.
No.
Your respect for people is really sort of apparent in this, both the audience and the people who work with you to put these, do this.
I can't imagine doing this without that respect. I mean, it would be.
Well, you would use them and
Lousy.
take them and make them into something else.
Yeah.
And also your clarity about staying on the sort of path you're on. You're not tempted, to commercialize this in some way or to.
I think I got all of that out of my system up in New York.
Well, that's
Being a
good.
celebrity for a few days, a few minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got that.
yeah. Yeah. Well,
And also knowing a few celebrities are not that happy about it, about what they had to do to keep it.
your book, what will be your book? What is in your book that you said you started?
Oh,
Is it the plays,
The
the
Roots.
scenes?
well, there are 3 books actually. There's one book, Bill French's editing of the street plays, and one book of the eco theater plays. And then there's a book that has to do with sort of autobiographical stuff about how I got into it, what my own roots are, and I'm sure I won't get to that for another 3 years. There's a magazine you ought to know about.
What's that?
It's a new one.
Hello, testing. Hello. No, let's see. Well, maybe you want to just talk about that since you mentioned it. What is this governor's program, or whatever it's called? What is it called?
Governor Summer Youth Program.
Governor's Summer Youth Program. Are you involved in that too?
Yes, he's going to be my assistant.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The Governor Summer Youth.
Well, tell me about it, and I'll ask you. I'll have a lot more things to ask you.
Previously, when I did it, my responsibilities involved keeping track of the work schedule, the hours worked, and the monies paid, which come from as its name implies, the governor's summer youth program comes from the legislature of West Virginia. The money is paid to Eco Theater, and Eco Theater employs the young people in the role of working in the arts. It's probably one of the only arts organizations that are involved in the Governor's Summer Youth Program. And it received, to the best of my knowledge, it received America the Beautiful Award from, I think that came down from the federal level and was presented by the governor's office to Maryat not long before she died. And that runs approximately 6 weeks. The kids are generally under the age of 18. Some as young as
14 to 21.
14 or as old as 21. Mostly just logistic sorts of things if they're going to be involved in a performance, and the scheduling of rehearsals and keeping things from getting in each other's way.
How are the kids picked for this, or do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure. Most of them are required because of the concepts of eco-theory, where it works is dealing with personal feelings and oral history. So a lot of the teachers and people down at the unemployment request them to come to eco-theater for the summer. And then we go and interview them before they're hired to let them know what we're getting into, and give them an idea of what we'll be doing before they take the job.
Because are there other aspects of the governor's youth program that don't have anything to do with the arts, or like work?
Yeah, a lot of it on the side of the road, picking up trash, cutting brush.
So you have to get the right kids.
Right.
Either they have to know what they're getting into too, I guess. Yeah. Has that been going on for a long time, that program?
Yeah, the program's been going on for,
Since 75, I believe.
it's been longer than that.
Longer?
For eco-theater, it's been that long, but the Governor Summer Youth Program's been going on for several years.
But Eco Theater's been doing it since 75.
Yeah.
So that's, okay, that's good, that's about that program. Let me go back, let's see, how can we do this? Maybe we should start with the present and then go back. I know Maryat started to, years before she died, started to train other playwright directors, right? Can you tell me about that? What did she do to broaden out what Eco Theater was doing?
Well, okay, well, as you know, we had workshops. She'd drawn people into eco-theater by having workshops, and they would have to be required to have 6 complete level workshops before you become a certified playwright director. And before she passed away, she had only written out what's to be going on in up to level 5. So we don't know we know what's supposed to be done, but she's never written it. So there is 5 certified, well, not certified, but 5 people who have completed all 5 level workshops and are able to teach with one of the assistants of another playwright and directed counsel. And
who are these people? I mean, where are these people?
they're in Illinois, in Texas, and that's it. Illinois,
California.
It's 3.
San Francisco.
No, not the certified playwright directors. It's 3 people in Illinois, and then Joyce Marshall in Texas, and then I in West Virginia.
What are the 5 levels? Can you describe what they are?
Well, they're based on taking oral histories, learning to write scenes within yourself, learning to be present on stage, flipping authority. That's pretty much it. You learn those things at the level 6.
And what's the 6th? I mean, I know she didn't write it.
Okay, level 6, it will be when we'll all come together as sort of a festival. we're supposed to have our own group
Hmm.
and well, that's what it is mostly. You're supposed to have your own group
Uh-huh.
to say, this is my group, and we travel around and perform different places.
I see. So everybody did you all come together for these 5 sessions for the 5 levels? Were they 5 separate times that you
Yeah.
came to get training?
hmm
And did everybody come here? Is that where it happened?
No, some happened in Kentucky,
Hmm.
in Texas, Illinois,
I see.
different places.
I see. So you all went through this. And how long a process was that?
Ooh, excuse me. Well, there are some people who've been in it for over 6 years.
How about for you?
Well, I've been in it for, this makes my 13th year in eco theater. So I kind of was with it when she first started doing the workshop, which was in '85. She just started teaching the playwright director to become playwright.
Yeah. Can you tell me, can you be even more specific about the 5, the training that went on, the different parts of it? Like, for example, what's involved in taking oral histories?
Ooh, okay, what's involved? It means going out, interviewing someone in your neighborhood, your community.
Uh-huh. How do you get people to talk to you?
How? Well, that's a good question because, well, most of the time you just explain to them what we're doing and that we're wanting to write plays about our community, about the people in our community, and let them know that, you know, we're just trying to more or less put a voice, make a voice for our community so that it can be performed and people can see what our community is mostly all about.
Are people afraid when you say that? Do they say, I can't be in a play, I'm not gonna
Well,
do it?
no. Most of the time it's not them who, well, most of the time they say, yes, you can take my story, but I don't want nothing to do with it, you know. So a lot of times we just take their stories and bring it back to whoever we're working with and have them to perform the scene.
And who's the group that do you have a group together that you've gotten stories from?
Well, no, not really. My line of work really is working with kids, which is dealing with the Governor Summer Youth Program, and down here at Seneca Mental Health with after-school drug and alcohol abuse kids. And that's what I mostly do is work with the troubled kids.
I see. I want to come back to that and hear about that. But let's see, I want to go back to the 5 aspects. So after you get these oral histories, or after you learn how to do that, then what's the next thing you said happens in the training?
Okay, the next thing we get them written out, and then we have the people to read them. Sometimes improvise, a lot of improvising on the oral history.
Not the people that gave you the oral history.
No, not the people. The person, usually whoever went to get the interview, they find someone else to do it.
But sometimes do people want to be in the plays whose stories they are?
Sometimes, yeah. Very seldomly, but sometimes.
So then what does the group do with the stories?
Okay, from the story. And see, I also mentioned, I should mention that we, like, for example, I went to interview someone in my community. I go there and I go interview several different people and try to work with all of the interviews to make one good scene.
I see.
And all of the interviews is never, mostly, or improvised. After that, we have the kids to get up there and read them, find a person who fits the scene the best, who can tell a story without having to act or become this old lady who was telling your story.
And by that time, have you written out the things in the form of scenes? You've written out the stories like scenes?
Yeah, right.
By taking pieces from here and there and making a scene. And then you give it to the kids.
Yeah.
And then I remember the thing about Maryat was she didn't want to work with trained actors, so these kids are not trained,
No.
right?
No.
So how do you get them to do those powerful kind of performances without trying to, you know what I mean? Without trying to act?
Well, there's one thing that Maryat always used about it. A lot of kids, a lot of people, you give them something to read and they're reading it, trying to act and, entertain. And she has this one thing, she says, read it flat. Just read the story flat. So she more or less have them to read the story, take the paper away, and then ask them to tell us the story, put it in your own words.
Huh.
So that's really the how it really becomes their story.
I see.
Mhm.
And when you ask them to do that, are they usually able to do it?
Not right off. A lot of times we have to work with them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it takes work to actually be able to, because then they feel that they have to remember everything that was in there, you know. And that would mean, like, if that was the case, it would mean that they're pleasing the playwright director instead of just being themselves
Yeah.
on stage.
And then what's the next part of the process after that?
Okay, after that we kind of polish the scene up. Once they get it to fit their, to where it's their story, they're telling the story. Then we'll polish the scene up and then start memorizing. And after the memorizing, we start working with talking loud and going through that work.
Being on stage,
Yeah.
present and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you do all this in the summer? Can you produce one play in the
Right.
summer?
In 6 weeks.
Huh. What did you do last summer?
Well, it's not. It's several different scenes. It's not a real.
It's not one play.
Yeah, it's not complete scene. It's several different scenes.
Can you describe what they were?
Most of them were based on the kids' lives.
You
Having
took oral histories from those kids.
well, yeah, and they see when I work with the kids, I let them interview each other
I see.
to kind of get to know each other before the job really gets to going. And so that gives them at least a scene or something that they can work with, whether they go out and get a good oral history. And there's a lot of times they don't get good enough oral history from people to come up with stuff. Well, yeah, it's just really a lot of work to try to get done in 6 weeks. So this past summer and the last 3 summers that I've directed the Governor Summer Youth Program was basically based on their own lives. And that's dealing with date rape or being sexually abused by the father or drugs, dealing with their own feelings.
And so they performed at Pipestem and at this prison, which is now a hotel?
No, this is our first year at the
I
prison.
see.
Yeah, this will be our first year.
So they've been doing it at Pipestem?
At Pipestem and around here in the West Coast.
Oh, I'd love to see the kids in the production.
Yeah.
What was I going to ask? Shoot, I forgot. What happens to the kids as they go through this process in the summer? What do you think happens to them? What changes do you see?
Well, I think that they most definitely grow. A lot of kids, they feel that they learn to read, they learn to write and spell a little better because they write their own scenes, and I'll help them to direct their own scenes. They write and direct their scenes, and I think that in a way it helps them to find themselves, to open up and realize that, for example, a girl who's been sexually abused by a father, she finally is able to come out and tell this story and finds out that she's not the only one. It gives them, allows them to open up and to see. And that's what I like so much about working with the kids, is because a lot of them are so, they feel what they have experienced or what they're going through at home, it's too shameful to talk about, so they keep these things built up inside, and it kind of it doesn't allow them to really be who they are, because they think they're some bad person because the father is, or the mother or whatever is abusing them in some way. So I feel that they learn to they realize that they're not alone in this world. And we've had audience come up and ask, how did you know my story? Or thanking them because they had identified with their story.
Wow, that's powerful. So it's powerful for the audience too.
For the audience, yeah.
Yeah. See, well, the kids must get a lot out of doing that then. I mean, in addition to the things you said, to have people come up and affirm them like that afterwards, that must be something too.
Yeah.
Do you know? Do their lives change because of this experience?
I think so. Most of them, yeah. Some kids who, I know two particular who used to be so shy and sat over in the corner, never had nothing to do or say with nobody. And after that summer, it was just like he blossomed, because he was able to relate to some of the things and talk to kids and build a trust in the 10 kids. So, yeah, most definitely it's good for kids.
So what's satisfying to you about doing this work?
The fact that these kids are able to see and to open up that they are not, to find out that they're not alone, that they can tell their stories, and I really relate to those because that was like the chance that I had when I started in the Governor Summer Youth Program.
Oh, that's how you got into it.
Yeah, I started as one of the kids.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you next about. When I saw you in the play, you did this John Henry thing, and I was going to ask you how you got to do that and how you got involved with Eco Theater in the first place. So maybe can you go back and tell me that story?
Yeah. Well, I started at the Governor Summer Youth Program as one of the kids.
When was that?
In 78.
Huh.
And I had signed up for the program, hoping to get a job on the state, picking up trash and cleaning and stuff. And evidently I had signed up too late. And or maybe perhaps I was, they requested me to go there because I had a lot of problems in my life and had tried to commit suicide several times. And so anyway, I was assigned to Eco Theater. And
did you know what you were getting into?
No, I did not what I was getting into at the time. And I have a scene that's written more or less telling you about the first week and how I felt. And anyway, it was about 20 kids that year. And so anyway, a few days later, the lady says, we're going to put on some plays. I had no idea.
The lady is Maryat?
Yeah, Maryat, yeah. And so right then, I just wanted to leave, it just terrified me. Here I am, got to get up there on stage and play some parts. So we had got into it for about 2 weeks. We had been working, and then I realized we was going to do John Henry. There was one guy who was there was just perfect for John Henry, but he wasn't reliable. He didn't come to work on time, and sometimes he wouldn't come to work at all. So it was only me and this other black girl who was in the program. And so when they started casting, this is the part in the scene, it says, okay, we don't have no black John Henry male. We either have to have a white John Henry male or a black John Henry female. And so anyway, this other girl who was kind of, she was real light. She just didn't play the part too well, so I got stuck with playing John Henry.
You got stuck because you didn't want to?
No, I didn't want to. No, but that was she gave me the part, so.
So how did you get into it? Because you were into it when I saw you.
Well, I don't know, I had, well, I had the part of John Henry, and I also had another part that
Yeah.
year, played two parts in John Henry. And she had just worked with me and was telling me not to become John Henry, just read it, just read the lines and learn the lines. And that's what I did. I just, because at the time I didn't read well, and I didn't really know what I was reading, so I was just reading the lines to memorize them. So anyway, I learned the lines, and she worked with me, and I played John Henry for three years.
Yeah. Well, did you ever kind of, what was there ever anything about John Henry and his story that got to be yours and your story? Or like, you know what I mean? Did you ever connect with that story?
I don't think so.
Huh.
I don't think it was really in it because, see, at that time, the script was already written.
Yeah.
So what we did was just memorize what was already written, because it was mostly oral history that Maryat had collected to write the play.
Mm.
So,
So that's how you got started with Eco Theater. Then what happened after that year, after that summer? Were you in
Okay.
high school still? Were you in high school at that time?
Yeah, at that time I was in high school.
So you went back to school that next year?
Yeah, I went back to school and then had signed up again for the following year. I loved it so much. It was like, it was a way of letting me know that I was somebody, It gave me a voice to play John Henry.
Mm.
And so I signed up the next 2 years, the following year. And after that I was, one year I didn't work because I went to Alabama to stay with my uncle.
Mm.
So, and then I got too old to work as a governor summer youth person. So I started working with the Hinton Company, performing during the summer, working with Maryat.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been with it ever since.
Yeah. Well, in the thing that I got in the mail after Maryat died, I forget what it said about you, but you were the person, you were singled out, and you were named as something like Maryat, she didn't give you Eco Theater, but do you remember what it said?
No, not exactly, but I think I know what you're trying to say.
So you must have gotten really close to her over all those years of working with her, and she must have believed that you could, carry on her work. Is that the case?
Well, that's the case. Somehow I feel that they're giving me more credit than I feel that I deserve, because it was just maybe about 5 years that I really started paying attention to Maryat and what she was doing. I've always just did what she told me to do,
I see.
and about 5 years ago I really just started paying attention and learning.
To the ideas that she had.
Yeah.
What made you start paying attention?
I realized then that it was something that I wanted to do. I liked doing what I was doing, and she was pushing me too. I guess she felt it was time. She realized I was just doing it for the pleasure of it and not really learning from it.
Sure. What would you say are some of the things you learned from her that are most sort of significant to you? Both about the techniques but also about the ideas behind them and that sort of thing.
Well, I don't know. Let's see. I don't know, because I myself, I feel that Maryat had given me something to live for, and she certainly did help me grow. she certainly did help me want to become somebody and start caring about myself and the people around me.
What, I don't know if you want to tell me this or not, but what was your life like, your situation in life kind of before you came into the program initially? Like, I'm curious about why you would want to commit suicide. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but
Well,
I'm asking what your story is kind of.
well, it all started, I guess I've come from, my father was an alcoholic, and I had a hearing disability.
Do you still have that?
I still have a hearing disability, yes. And I was seeing a lot of things, like my father would come in and beat my mom, my older brothers and sisters. And I felt that something wasn't, well, anyway. And then my sister, because of my hearing disability, I didn't get along with a lot of kids, because, you know, didn't always hear what was going on, couldn't really carry on a good conversation with people, so I've always felt sort of a loner. And I got myself involved in some older people who I thought, well, who made me feel important, which was dealing with drugs and alcohol. And being taken advantage of. I got pregnant when I was 13 years old, and had a baby. Well, I got pregnant in March and turned 14 in April. And
Did you raise that baby?
yeah.
Wow.
So, but I didn't want to. In fact, I went to Ohio to have an abortion, but found out I was too far gone. And didn't want the baby. It was really hard thing to deal with.
Wow, I'll bet.
But had planned to put it up for an adoption. It's a him. Had planned to put him up for an adoption, and found out that I had this toxemia, which is a kind of a blood disease or something.
What's it called?
Toxemia.
Oh, I can see you.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so they had to take him at 8 months. And after they took him, they told me that I would probably not be able to have any more kids. So I was, I decided then I was going to keep him, because that may be the only baby that I'll ever have. So then from there I had a lot of problems with my mother. She didn't support. I didn't get a whole lot of support from anyone. But then yet trying to tell me how to do everything. And it was just, I've had a lot of problems in my family. So that was the main reason, because it just felt like I wasn't, you know, here they are tell me this is mine, it's your responsibility, but then everything I did was done or said, you know, it just wasn't right, and we just constantly battling against my family. So I had continued. I came back to West Virginia. I stayed in Ohio to have the baby, and came back to West Virginia, and wasn't too much longer before I had gotten back on to drinking and taking drugs and stuff, trying to get out of it. And that's when I had tried to commit suicide several times.
You lived a lot of life before you were 17 or whatever.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Absolutely.
And now what does it feel like your direction is in your life?
My direction?
Yeah, where are you going? You know, what are you about?
Well, I'm about, I feel that my direction is to work with kids. Because I feel that I relate to them so well. because, you know, I've lived that life,
Mhm.
and I sort of know, and I know that as far as I just felt like I was really on the bottom, and Maryat helped me.
So you can help them.
Yeah, so that's what I feel like I want to keep on. I want to continue on doing eco theater to help them, to show, in a way, my appreciation of what Maryat had done for me.
But isn't that nice to sort of pass it on like that?
Yeah, it is. You know, it's real funny because I don't know if I should be telling this or not, but
If I use it, if I write it, I'll send it to you and you can tell me if you don't really use it.
okay. But it was one thing that Maryat, a story that she had told me about. When she was little, they had a black servant, and this lady was called Mamie. Mamie, I think it was. And she really was in love with this woman because the woman had taken care of her, and you know, she was like her best friend because she was kind of like shut off from the rest of the family. And one day she came home and had found out that her mom had let this Mamie leave without Maryat knowing about it. She didn't say so long to her, bye or anything.
Gosh.
So she told me that was like while she went out there in the streets of Harlem, was sort of like looking for Mamie, and was wanting to say thanks and you know, but she never did find her. But instead, she worked with a lot of black kids, and she felt that she somewhere that she was hoping that maybe Mamie would get the idea, would know that she is doing this to show her appreciation by working with black kids and those. So that's sort of how I feel. She had passed it on.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Tell me about your work at the mental health, is it mental health center?
Yeah, I'm not working with mental health kids. This is a program that dealing with mainly drug and alcohol kids, kids who are abusing it. And they've been sent there by probation officers or teachers, some counselor or parents or someone like that.
Is it a residential place?
Yeah.
So do you live there with them?
No, I don't live there. And so, anyway, it's an 8-week program. They're required to come the 8 weeks. And after the 8 weeks are over, they don't have to come. But I've been working there since January, and I've had some kids who continue to want to come because of eco theater. They feel that they're getting these things out and they get to write about their personal lives under the safety of another person's name. So it's been going real well down there.
So you do, that's what you do during the year, or that's not the summer, that's during the rest of the year?
During the rest of the year.
And you do these 8-week sessions with the kids?
Yeah.
And you basically do the eco theater kind of process with them?
Right.
I see.
Yeah.
So you're doing it all the time then?
Pretty much, yeah, because I'm now working with people at my home. I just have a couple of adults who come by and we work and perform, write scenes in the living room and improvise and get in scenes written.
Where do you live? You live near here?
I live in Hinton. It's about 35 miles away.
Oh yeah, I've been to Hinton. Isn't there a diner? There's a river that goes through the middle of the town, isn't there?
Yeah, Greenbrier River.
And there's a diner or something like that. Or a restaurant. Maryat and I went to eat breakfast there. It's kind of a self-serve restaurant. Or, not self-serve, but you go up to this counter and they make the stuff and you take it back to your table. At least I think that's how it works. It's right on the river.
Then would have been a Cook's or Dairy Queen or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know what it was, but anyway. So you do that with some of are these your friends or just people, neighbors? Or?
Yeah, neighbors mostly and friends. And I've been also working with some smaller kids from 11 on up to, about 11 is the youngest. who I'm trying to get them to work with, working with their writing streams and trying to get them to perform.
That's great. One of my ideas that I've written about before, and I did some work with these women who were writing their own stories too, not for acting out, but for publishing. You know, these women that I mentioned before, I was working with them. And to me, for people to write their stories or to put their stories down or to tell their stories is by itself. Even if just to be listened to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just to have somebody listen without interrupting or saying, "Oh, you should have done this."
Yeah, yeah.
Just to take it in that you're telling, you know, them a story. There's something about that that's powerful for people. For me, it is, and I know for these other women too. So I'm very interested in that. What happens? There's this one writer, Joan Didion, who says writing, and I suppose this could apply to telling your story too. But she says writing is the act of saying "I." You know, when you're not sure, there is an I maybe, or who that I is.
Mm-hmm.
To tell your story is to say I to the world. You know, I, look at me. This is my story. This is not anybody else's story. It's only my story. And I think, you know, that piece of the eco-theater idea is really powerful to me. The acting out is too, because that's how you sort of put it out to other people. But just the telling of it and the receiving of that stories. Wow, it sounds like you're really just doing this work wherever you find people interested, you know?
Yeah, that's the idea. That's the idea. Especially now, because we're wanting more people interested in it, and wanting them to come and take the workshops, so
Oh,
that
good.
we'll have
Yeah.
more people out there to train. Right now, they call me the director of training. So instead of me going around trying to train different people, you know, in different states, I would like to be able to train more people to do it, to do the training themselves, so that I would be able to concentrate on having my own group. I really enjoy working with kids, and doing workshops is mostly dealing with the adults, which I don't mind. I just want to be sure that I have that time of working with the kids.
So what's happening with Eco Theater now that Maryat has died? I mean, what directions is it going? Well, you just said one thing. You want more people to come and get trained. Sort of make it happen in more places.
Yeah. In fact, we have a workshop in June, a level 1 workshop. Who some people are coming. We don't know exactly where from, but know that one's coming from Seattle, who is interested in eco theater, and there's a man down in Fayetteville who is very interested in it, to so that he can have sort of like a governor's summer youth program doing eco theater in Fayetteville. And he was hoping to send maybe 3 or 4 people so that they can be trained to do it. And then we have some people here in West Virginia who will be attending that workshop. So it's growing.
Yeah, oh, that's good.
Believe it or not, that was one of the things that scared most of us, and me particularly, when Maryat passed away. I just knew for sure because it was going to go down the drain. But we had had a week-long workshop just this past week.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and then had the board meeting, and it looked real good.
Oh,
We
good.
got a lot of support from the board, and it looks like we're going to keep it going.
Great.
Yeah.
Why were you thinking it wouldn't keep going?
Well, because when Maryat was, when the board was here for her memorial service, I guess because it was so close to her death and everything, it just looked like no one, the board members were interested, and a lot of things were left unanswered.
Oh.
and didn't know who had the right to do what. Did we have the right to continue to do what we were doing? For example, what I'm doing in Hinton,
I see.
and to use the Eco Theater name. You know, none of that stuff was answered,
Oh, yeah,
and so we were concerned
I see.
that. And see, most of the people that was on the board are people who were there for Maryat
Mm-hmm.
sake, and not really, well, for the Eco Theater too, but they were there for Maryat.
Mm-hmm.
And a few of them had resigned since she passed away.
But enough have stayed to make it good.
Mhm.
It's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know somebody who, I know her pretty well. She was going to come down. Maybe this was what you did this past week. Her name's Lydia Walker.
Mhm.
She's a friend of mine. In fact, I live with her sister up
Mm.
in Massachusetts.
Wow. Well, she told me that she knew you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll be going. So she's the one that came and worked with you all or something to help you
Mhm.
get it figured out.
Mhm.
Well, that's great. And so it was successful, and you
Yeah,
feel like
it
it's going
was.
to go on. Good.
Yeah.
So what's the structure of Eco Theater? There's a board. Do they make all the decisions about things?
No, it's a board, and then there's a PD council, Playwright Directed Council.
Oh, I see.
And the board kind of maintains the money and all of that good stuff. And the playwright directors sort of handles the decision of is it Eco Theater, more of the artistic part
I see.
of it.
And then, is there some administrator that runs things and answers the phones that I noticed when I called up here?
Okay, that's Martha, who is our secretary, who happened to had gallbladder surgery last week.
Hmm.
So she'll be out of work for 6 to 8 weeks.
Hmm.
But yeah, there is an administrator, Kay Hardesty,
Hmm.
who take care of the books and
I see.
everything. But it looks like now, because she owns the H&R Blocks and she's extremely busy.
Mhm.
So it looks like now that Martha will be keeping the books and more or less the bookkeeper and secretary. And,
I see.
mhm.
So you got this workshop in June. That's kind of like stage one for
Yeah,
for
level
being
one
a
workshop.
playwright director.
Right.
And so then those people will come back again for the other stages, probably.
Yeah, hopefully. Mhm.
And then you might have another stage one to get another group of people
Right,
going on the project.
absolutely.
And you're in charge of all that training.
Right.
So what does that mean? What does that job involve?
Well, that involves teaching the workshops, and going through.
Do the other playwright directors teach as well?
No, well, one of them will come back and assist me.
Mm.
And one of the people who's on the Playwright Directors Council, which is 5 of us, will assist me regardless of where the workshop is being held.
I always thought it was pretty great of Maryat to start training other people before she died, because otherwise it would have died probably.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah?
Mhm.
Do
Yeah.
you feel hopeful about it really going on and being bigger and more
Yeah,
people
I
coming?
do now. Yeah, I feel very hopeful.
How do you try to get out to other people to pass the word around?
Well, we agreed this past weekend that all of the playwright directors will work with people in their community and have this like a weekend workshop, working with people in your living room or at the library or wherever, to kind of spread the word. And also the board agrees to do anything that they can do to spread the word and invite people to come to workshops and stuff.
It's really the process is really a great tool, isn't it, for working with people of all ages and all situations and on local level, kind of right there in your community. I mean, what I was saying before about people telling their stories, I just think, a friend of mine was telling me about a class she taught at a university, and she gave each person in the class 3 hours to tell their story. I don't know what kind of class this was, or how come she had 3 hours to give each person, but she said that group that group never wanted to disband after the class was over, after the semester was over. They kept calling her up and coming back, and they never wanted to quit. They got so much out of it, you know? And I just think about wouldn't it be neat if it did grow and get into lots of communities? I mean, I could just see lots of people being touched by it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great. I'm glad things are looking good at this point. Let me see. Do you think, how do you think, well, one of the questions I ask everybody is, how does the work you're doing, how do you think that it makes the world a better place, so to speak? How do you think that the work you're doing changes things in the world?
Well, let's see. Again, it gives everybody a voice to speak. It gives them a chance to look inside of them.
So what if everybody has a voice? What difference does that make?
Well, not everybody speaks their voice.
Mm.
Not everybody can go out here and tell a stranger their story.
Mm-hmm. But what does it matter if people have a voice or don't have a voice?
Because I feel that if they're able to have a voice, then they can find out who they really are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that if they continue to not speak, continue to not talk about their feelings, they do things, they become someone else to hide those feelings.
Mm.
And if they have that chance to tell their stories, you know, they eventually are able to find out who they really are and accept it.
Mm-hmm. And be it.
And just be it, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's nice. I think that's true too. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Did you ever think you would be involved in theater?
No, never.
How did you learn the techniques about theater and stuff like that? Did you learn from Maryat?
Yeah. Maryat taught me everything.
Yeah. How about writing scenes and stuff? Did she teach you that too?
Yeah, I learned that through doing the workshop.
Are you good at that?
Well, sort of, so.
So? Really? Just only so?
I do some writing that a lot of people was very impressed with.
Impressed with?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think you should say that. Is it easy for you to write the scenes?
Yeah, it is. If I can have that moment to be, yeah, it is.
Can you tell me some more about that process? I'm interested in the creative process. So you have this bunch of oral histories. So then what do you do? How do you get from there to a scene? And maybe you can use an example of one that you've written or something that would tell about that. How does it click? How do you find the seed or the theme or whatever you find? I don't know.
Well, you're talking basically on oral history.
Yeah. How do you make the oral histories into a scene? And how do you stick it together? How do you get a piece here and a piece here and a piece here and make it into something whole?
Okay, well, sort of the way it is that you go into your communities, you interview about 5 or 6 people.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you have that, you write it down.
You transcribe it?
Yeah,
you type it all out?
Most of it, yeah. You
Uh-huh.
transcribe it. Then you have people to read it. And that...
They just read it raw before
Yeah.
you make a scene of it?
Yeah, they just
I see.
completely read the scene.
Uh-huh.
And then they get up there and improvise on it
Uh-huh.
to
And
what
it's-
it would be,
Yeah.
how they would say it if
Yeah.
they were telling the story. then you would get another one of the scenes that was taken from another person,
Uh-huh.
and have someone else to read that and tell that story,
Mm-hmm.
and see what good come out of that story.
Uh-huh.
And so it keeps going on for the 5 interviews, and you pick out the good thing that stands out about this community or the people in the community.
From listening to all of this,
Yeah, and
you're sitting there listening to all of this, right?
yeah.
And when you think of that? I don't know why they wouldn't be. I would think all the kids would want to do that once the word got around. So you were describing the process, so people get up and they read these things and then they tell these things in their own words.
Yeah, in their own words.
And then you're listening to all this, right?
Right. And then by that time, we transcribe all of that again, and then we
In
put
their
it,
own words again?
Yeah, in their own words.
I see.
well, not in that, well, yeah, more or less in their own words.
Mm-hmm.
And then we put them together, and a scene creates from the oral history that comes from Lewisburg.
And how do you put them together? Do you put them together, or
Well, I work with them to put them together.
like what do you say? You say, what do you people see here that's happening, or how does that go at that point?
Okay, well, say for example, there was a person talking about a wine still, moonshine still, or something like that. Okay, they would, we would write that scene, and that's more or less the main thing, yeah. So we take that and we use our words and talk, and we develop a scene out of that, the wine still, the moonshine still.
Uh-huh.
So that would be one scene developed from just that man telling us how that was created and how how they used to pass out down there and couldn't get up the hill and stuff like that. So that would be one scene there. And then we just take the main pieces of them and use from the improv their words and put them together.
I see. And so that's a process you do with the kids or whoever you're working with. You don't do that all by yourself.
No.
Sure. Okay, let's see. Is there any sort of spiritual aspect to your work? I mean, or reason for you to be doing this work? Do you have any kind of spiritual motivation?
In a way, I believe in sharing. I believe that in a way that God sent Maryat to me, and she helped me. She helped me through, and I feel gifted. I feel blessed that He chose me to be the one. So now I go and do. I feel that now I need to share.
So there is that. Do you feel like you have power?
Most of the time. Sometimes.
What sort of power is it? Or where does it come from?
Well, let's see, my power I feel that I have is over dealing with the kids. And I think it comes from being able to relate to them, being able to see and to understand instead of no, that's not the right way, this is not how you should do it. I feel that well, yeah. I feel I have that kind of power with the kids.
And where does that come from? Why do you have that kind of power?
Probably I feel because I've been through it.
And you also told the truth, right, about your own life
Mhm.
to them, so you're not just trying to prop them up or
Right.
something, you know. They trust that you've not only been there, but you've come out some other side, right?
Right.
And you just haven't sort of pushed it all under the rug, and now you're trying to be somebody special to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I must say that the kids really like so much about me, because I go in there just as me. I'm not no teacher. I'm not no counselor. I'm not a therapist. You know, I'm just me.
Mm.
And they really relate to me.
Mm.
You know, we get along real well, a lot better than some of the other staff people. Most of the other staff people.
Mm. I'll bet. Do you think of yourself as a creative person?
Mhm.
No?
Kind of, in a way, yeah. See, I tell you, I've been put down, and my self-esteem has been so low throughout my life. It's still not where it needs to be,
Mm-hmm.
especially now. I should feel good about where I'm at, but instead I'm more scared. I'd rather not be called the master teacher, because I don't feel like no master teacher.
Well, that's probably why you're going to make such a fabulous master teacher. Because you don't feel like you're worth it, or you don't feel like you're it.
Yeah.
That's probably just going to be the precise source of how you're going to be such a fabulous one, you know? If you thought you were the greatest thing in the world, I don't know.
I don't either.
I think it's really, you'll probably grow into it, you know?
Well, I'm hoping. That's what I think. Eventually, I've grown into where I am now.
Yeah.
So,
Does it feel like a lot of burden is on your shoulders or something?
burden.
Yeah, responsibility.
Yeah. And see, that's just. I'm not even sure what my responsibilities are right now, and that would be. Lydia is coming back to
Oh,
work with the three people, Martha, Jean, and I, to help us find out what our responsibilities are as
Okay.
working as a three people running the office.
Oh, that's
Who
good.
got what responsibility is whose, and
Mm-hmm.
who does that, and who says yay or nay. Or,
Uh-huh. Oh, that's good. That'll be helpful then.
yeah, it really will.
Great. Well, I don't think I have any more questions. Let's see. I think you've answered every single one of them. Yeah? That's it?
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to say that you haven't said?
No, not right offhand.
Well, if you think of something later, I'll just turn this back on.
Okay.
Is there anything in writing? You said you mentioned before that you'd written something.
Yeah.
Can I have a copy of that?
Yeah, I can give you a copy of one or two of them.
And is there anything else about Eco Theater that's been put out in the last 5 years? I have some stuff from before, and so I was wondering if there's any other written stuff that I could.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure I'm sure it's some stuff there.
Okay, so can I take some of that with me?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. Well, let's quit.
Okay.
Thank you. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing. Okay, this is Charlie. What's your last name?
Haywood.
Haywood. He's also been involved in Eco Theater for quite a long time, right? When did you
On and
get-
off. On and off for about 11 years.
Huh. So tell me how you got connected up to Maryat in this whole endeavor.
Well, like I said, 11 years ago, I moved to Summers County. I happened to be the neighbor.
Is that nearby, Summers County?
Yeah,
Is that where Hinton is?
that's where Hinton is.
Okay.
And Maryat was living on Palley's Creek where I had moved. And I picked up odd jobs being sort of a handyman around her
Mm-hmm.
farm. She ran cattle and was constructing a barn. And at the same time, she was having this Summers County youth program. And she was in need of a replacement for the supervisor at that time. And so I replaced that supervisor, worked with the youth of Summers County, and as a result of that, was put on stage as an eco-theater performer by Maryat. And
What do you mean you were put on stage? What did she ask you to do? Did you do a scene or something?
yes, she asked me to play a character called Toby, who was a tobacco-chewing roughneck in the play of John Henry, which is about the life of the legendary, or not legendary, Big John, big black man.
Yeah. Why did she ask you to do it? Did she need somebody, or did she think you would benefit from it, or?
She was short on people. She
I
needed
see.
a warm body,
I see.
and I didn't mind doing it.
Had you ever acted before?
No.
What did you think about that when she asked you to do it?
It was sort of a comedic guy. I had fun doing it.
Uh-huh.
I actually do dip snuff. And
And the character did too?
yeah, it was easy to go from doing Toby to the philosophy of Maryat's being on stage, because we were essentially like and I enjoyed it. I didn't know that this sort of thing was going to take up so much of my time in the future. Most of my involvement and responsibility was more in management. But after the Toby thing, then I started getting more involved with Maryat and the performance and the philosophy aspects of being on stage. That's the only thing I can think of, is just being on stage. That was the name of her book that she didn't finish. And I have done acting and eco-theater. To me, to Maryat, it's non-acting. To me, it's acting with quotes around it.
Can you say some more about that, the difference? What do you mean by acting, or what was the idea about acting or being on stage that she had and you had?
Well, to be oneself, and the actual meaning of being, should come natural. But in order, I feel, and I think perhaps Maryat too, I don't think anyone's ever going to hit right on her philosophy. It was very complex. But in order to do this, there has to be relaxation and acceptance. And Maryat took the career of rejection, some people call it, the pursuit of performing and acting, and she made it, if you will, a career of non-rejection. No one was rejected. And at the same time it was grassroots. And how can one reject how another person feels, given that we're all different? And I think most people will agree that we are all different. And taking this and just letting it flow can bring about some credible and communicative aspects of performing, I think. And that is, I feel, the essence of eco-theater. You can get into the grassroots part of it and the coming up from the people, which is certainly true. But to represent the people, and not only yourself, but the other people's stories in your own way, without them seeming incongruent, I guess. It has to come from the bottom up. And with the essential power of the material coming from the people.
How do you take somebody else's story and make it your own story and be yourself at the same time?
Years of living help. Just like I think it would probably be inappropriate for a teenager to be portraying or to try to take what's in him and adapt to a character who's a 10-year war veteran. There are limitations everywhere. Could you tell me what the question was again?
How does one take somebody else's story and
okay. Given that that you've been allowed enough time to experience the emotions that this person is experiencing in this story or scene, instead of like the script saying, this man almost breaks down as he relates the following. You would leave out, this man breaks down as he relates the following, and just continue with the script. And then whatever this person felt about that experience would be how it emotionally and psychologically, to me, I feel, would come into the performance to give it communicative power. Because it comes from the well where all the other legitimate feelings of that person are coming from.
So you must have to pick a story that's kind of congruent with your own to begin with.
It's very helpful, yeah.
But I suppose it would be possible by the imagination to sort of get into something that wasn't your own, or even like your own, or near your own.
Yeah. Once you've had enough time to develop a core from to sound intellectual, to provide context. Once you've got the core to provide that, then sure, you don't have to have experienced that in a related way. You can take from your core and imagine, as you said, how you would experience it.
Was that?
That's fun too. That you express it better than I do, probably.
No, I didn't. Did you do that in your acting with Eco Theater?
Uh-huh. That's all I really like to do is that sort of stuff. When people push you to be something different, it becomes non-fun and unreal.
So it sounds like the whole thing has to be done in an atmosphere where people are accepted and received, not judged or, like you said, rejected for how they're doing it. Is that correct?
Probably most essential at the grassroots level. Mary has seasoned performers who've worked with her for years, as I have, and a lot of the material we do are stories that she wrote about people. We might not necessarily know the people, but they're done in an Appalachian genre. It's the only thing she likes that word, genre, and I think that's probably, whatever it means, that has a lot to do with the roles and the performances of Eco Theater. It's from a grassroots Appalachian genre.
What was I going to say? Oh, I was asking you about acceptance. And you said this was, you said something about, was it acting? It was a profession of rejection?
I've heard it called that,
Yeah.
and I can see where they
Because
could get
it's so
that.
competitive.
Yeah,
And tryouts and auditions and all that.
yeah. I feel in a lot of ways that there's people out there in the professional aspects of it that use tools very, very akin to the tools that Maryat uses. Perhaps they will say, you know, they're not going to take a grassroots organization and train them. They're just seeing them because they're busy with so much other stuff, and they say, you're not right for the part. Now, if that person has come up there and put something on that wasn't themselves, I don't wonder that they're not right for the part. And I think a lot of people do that and aren't right for the part, as they say. But the ones that come up and just be themselves and they're right for the part.
So that's the ticket to be yourself.
That it's my experience. This is all very philosophical, and you can get really bogged down in it. But just from observation of people who are successful, that's how it comes about. And of course, it comes about a lot of times when people aren't successful, and there's many, many of them, many more that aren't than are in professional theater.
What about an Eco Theater?
In Eco Theater, everyone is successful because the goals are different. The goals are not success with big dollar signs on it. It's only success as far as a whole program.
But it's still good theater, so that must be also a criteria for it. I mean, when I saw the Hidden play, it was very moving. You know, it was as moving as, or more moving than some other plays, Broadway plays, or, you know, other staged events. So it works on that level. I mean, it's successful in that way, too.
Yes.
But how do you do that when you're working with untrained people and you just take anybody that comes, kind of?
I feel that there's a lot of answers to that question that could be found in concepts of therapy, growth, and the social psychological aspects of society. I akin a lot of it to psychodrama. Maryat and I never really discussed this. She knows that I felt that way. She never disputed it. But I was just recently reading some of her stuff this morning, and she goes into even the confidentiality of the rehearsal process and the material and discussion thereof not taking place even among the company as it's being done, as a respect towards one another. These are all considered to be very in literature are all considered to be very therapeutic to growth in the person and interpersonal relationships. I think that avenue is a big part of eco-theater. And I think that, like I said, that there's overlaps into other programs that are in society, such as mental health, entertainment. I think Maryat would have been hesitant to say that her circle and any other circle that involved theater interconnected, even the smallest part. I think she would have been hesitant to say that. I feel they do, though.
Tell me about your relationship to Maryat. Were you close friends with her? Is that what you came to be over the years?
Yeah, we were friends a long time. Hot again, cold again, a lot.
Two strong people.
We caused a lot of sparks many times.
I can imagine.
But the amazing thing is that after all those years, and some of the sparks were maybe better classified as bonfires, we remained friends. I don't think you could say we were intimately friendly, like best friends. Maryat's history is very antithetical, I guess, of the Appalachian experience. She had an amazing ability to participate in that without wielding a stick of judgment on a lot of things, which allowed us to be friends. And the friendship to endure, I think.
Are you from around here? Is this your home?
I grew up in southern West Virginia. I'm from several small places around here. I went to high school in Beckley. I lived in the coal fields a lot when I was younger. But this area, southern West Virginia. Not so much Greenbrier-Lewisburg area.
What had you been doing before you came into contact with eco-theater?
I had been a machinist over in Beckley.
What's a machinist?
For a couple of years.
Make parts?
Make parts. We made pumps. And then before that, I worked in mental health. about eco theater and the way Maryat approached it was easy for me to grasp, I feel, because of my work in mental health.
What was your work in mental health?
I worked in an alcoholism program and as a crisis counselor for psychiatric, social, drug abuse, referrals from the emergency room in a hospital, and then I worked in mental retardation up in Waltham, at the Waltham, Massachusetts, with the Eunice Kennedy Shriver Research Center. And then that's what I had studied in school, was psychology, and its relationship to mental health.
Are you doing that work now? Oh, no, now you're not doing
No.
Yeah.
No, not now. At least not from behind the desk.
Well, the governor's youth program must have a lot of those components. I mean, you're going to work with that this summer, right?
Yeah. The ideal is to have the kids experience some growth from it. I feel fortunate that I have the tools to work with that sort of program. There's no guarantee that it will in fact achieve growth in them. I've seen it happen though. And then just like in any bell curve or normal distribution, you're going to have some that really don't enjoy it, some that really get a lot out of it, and some that it just keeps them going. It's a job. It's a foretaste of what work is like, I would suppose, for young kids.
Does it affect them in more ways than that, than just being a job, though? Do you see changes in growth for the kids that you've worked with before?
Yeah, I have.
What kinds of changes?
I think maybe it would be easier to see in people from Appalachia.
Why is that?
Because Appalachia is so isolated. Its geography. It's opening up some now, perhaps as a result of programs like this. But the changes that I've seen have been in the most part how people relate to one another. And in an isolated environment, there's not a whole lot of that going on outside of the, what do you call it, familial environment. And you see, there's a lot of shyness. Maybe it's not shyness. Maybe it's typical old hillbilly suspicion. Maybe it's just reticence. But there's parts of all this involved in an isolated culture, and you can see the change as they come together with other people.
So they learn something about relating?
I think so. Yeah. If you're fortunate. Like I said, it doesn't always work. But I think the thing is, and the thing that was worked so well for Maryat was that she didn't put on the expectation that it was going to work, that their life would be improved. If it wasn't okay, there was no sense to feel that they'd missed something, and if it was okay, they were always welcome to participate in the future if they wanted to. Very accepting.
Why did you keep on participating?
I like liked acting or non-acting. Maryat calls it non-acting. I don't really want to get into the non-acting versus acting.
Right.
Because then you can get wrapped up in Shakespeare and the world's a stage and we're all but actors, and then I'll add infinitum. I really enjoyed acting. I'll just call it everything acting. And it was motivation enough for me to continue.
Excuse me, go ahead.
I thought for a while there was a chance that I could make a living at it.
At acting?
Yeah. But I found out there wasn't. Eco-theater is not designed to help you make a living at acting. I don't think any of them are.
So did you try to make a living? You mentioned yesterday you'd done a couple of acting.
Yeah, I did.
What were they?
I did some theater for Virginia University over at Blacksburg, and then some theater for a repertory company down in Mars Hill, North Carolina, and a film part in John Sells' Mate One. And
Where was that filmed? Was that in Hinton?
it was filmed in Beckley.
Oh, Beckley.
Yeah. And
I
some
love that film.
film work down in Charleston.
So what came of all that?
It's just too hard to make a living unless you're gonna go for broke. Go to like New York or LA.
And you didn't want to do that?
No, at that time I didn't.
Was that kind of acting different from what you'd done in eco-theater? Was it substantially different, or was it similar?
The more similar I could make it, the easier it was for me to be successful at doing that. There's a lot for what I bring to it. There's a lot of eco-theater. From what's put on me, it's a lot different. But the more you can reconcile the two, for me, the easier it was to be successful. And I was generally successful too. I do say so.
That's great.
But you just can't find the work.
Yeah. Unless you're willing to change your whole life and, like you say, go to one of the big cities.
And I was already in my 30s. And I didn't even get to that point until like a few years ago. And then I was almost 40. Eco-theater did provide me a stage though, where I could do that, where I could try to accomplish something. I know the result of isolation is you, other than this internal insight sort of thing, your opportunities to do a lot of things successfully are isolated by the fact of being isolated, inherent in it. Not saying that that's bad.
Yeah. So then a grassroots thing like eco-theater gives people an opportunity they might never have to sort of...
For me, it allowed me an opportunity to discover that by using myself I could communicate effectively with strangers. And that's one of the thrusts of Eco Theater.
Did that change?
Some people can do it and it doesn't matter to them, they have no desire to keep doing it, because they can do it maybe so readily in their everyday life. One of the big things about Maryat was that the freedom of the stage allowed you to do it, because somehow, defensively or whatever, in your regular day life, you just couldn't quite get to that point. That was one of her big points.
So that's sort of a paradox, isn't it? But by being up on stage, you can be more free and less reticent than.
It is.
I got to turn this over. Hang on.